Hey there, how are you doing? I hope you're doing great. Eduardo from Beta here, and in this video today we are going to talk about how to create metrics, milestone, how to measure your progress towards your goal. First of all, if you haven't seen our previous video where you're talking about the 5 laws of a great goal, please pause this one and watch that one before, as this is a sequel, okay? On last video we talked about how a great goal must fulfill 5 requirements. It must be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant and time-bound. And in this video right here we are only talking about the measurement spectrum. So following the example of our last video, let's say that you want to work abroad, you want to work as a cook, and you come to the conclusion that you need to learn more kitchen-related vocabulary, and you set yourself the goal of learning 300 new kitchen vocabulary words in 2 months, okay? The first thing there is that your goal must have numbers. You absolutely cannot measure anything without numbers. So that's a good start. You won't have to learn 1, 2, 3, 4 new words. You have to learn 300. Not in 1, 2, 3 weeks, but in 2 months. The problem with this goal is that it may seem too big, too far away, too unreachable, right? 300 new words. That's why pretty much anywhere you see anybody talking about goals and setting goals, you will see them suggesting you to break your goals into smaller goals, okay? So instead of focusing on 300 new words in 2 months, focus on 25 new words per week, for example. And you can break down even further, 5 new words a day. So everything you need to focus is on the next step, which is much smaller than the end game, than the end goal. And these smaller goals that you break your bigger goal into are called milestones. And this name, milestones, come literally from stones that were put in roads in order for the travelers to see how much they were progressing through their journey. So that's pretty much the same idea. Every time you go through a week and you actually learn 25 new words, you know that you've reached a milestone, and keep reaching the milestones will eventually get you to your end goal. Setting milestones gives you 2 great advantages. The first is that it raises your expectancy of actually accomplishing your goal, and the second is that it gives you motivation each time you reach a milestone. It gives you that reassurance that you are on the right path. Every time you set a milestone, you can do this in 2 different ways. First of them is breaking down your goal by time, which is what we've done in this example. We had 2 months, so we broke down weekly, and then 300 words in 2 months, 25 words per week. And the other option that you have is breaking down your objective into tasks. So let's say that you have to make a presentation in 1 month, okay? So what's the first thing you need to do in order to make this presentation? You need to first choose a subject to talk about. Then you need to research about the subject. Then you must need to define which areas of the subject you are gonna address in your presentation. And then you have to summarize, and you have to make a script, and you have to rehearse, and you have to actually make the material that you're gonna use to presentation. So there are lots of tasks, okay, subtasks, that could be used as milestones, and to each individual task you will set a proper amount of time. Okay, I think I need only 2 days to choose a subject, but I actually need 5 days to research more about the subject, and you will create the milestones this way. Another method that works for some people, so you might as well try, is to think backwards. So if in 1 month you have to make a presentation, think of the immediately previous step that you must have done right before making the presentation. Let's say that you want everything ready 5 days before the actual day of your presentation. That means that you have now 25 days to make everything. And think of the immediately previous step once again. What is the last thing you must do to finish your presentation, right? and you keep thinking backwards until you reach the day that you are right now planning, okay? So there are these two ways you can go about it. And something you must definitely take into account when your goal involves learning, when it's a learning goal, which is probably the case if you want to learn English, for example. You must acknowledge that there is a learning curve. It basically means that in the beginning of your journey, you will struggle much more. It will be much harder for you to get the results. You are not used to the routine yet. You haven't picked up the pace. You haven't picked up the rhythm of the studies, for example. Especially if the subject is new for you. So in our example of learning 300 new words in 2 months, instead of breaking down 300 equally in 8 weeks, you could, for example, in the first 2 weeks set as your milestones learn 10 new words per week. And then you keep raising. The following 2 weeks, learn 20. In the following 2 weeks, learn 30, and so on. Doing so also avoids you getting frustrated, because imagine the situation. You set yourself in the first week to learn 25 new words and you're struggling. It's hard for you. You're not used to all this kind of new study, right? So you had a lot of difficulty and perhaps you can't even accomplish the milestone. And you will look to your whole planning and you'll see, oh my god, I have 7 more weeks of this struggle. It's very hard, and you may end up quitting. And that's what we want to avoid, and considering this learning curve into your milestone is a very good way of preventing that to happen. I also like to divide learning metrics in 2 different groups: performance metrics and effort metrics. Performance metrics are great because they show us how much we're improving, but we don't have control over them, and that is a problem. Let me give you an example. Let's say that one of the things you want to do with English is you want to improve your listening. You want to understand spoken English better. So you set a goal to yourself. First of all, you would need to know how much you understand right now, so you must have a pretty good idea of where you are. But the issue is that it's very hard to predict the rate of our improvement. It's something that is really hard to do. English courses try to do that, saying that you will be fluent in 1 year, in 2 years, but it's very extremely common to see these predictions going wrong. And there are even more issues in that example, and more issues that we cannot control. Perhaps in a particular episode there's a character... That's my cat. Okay. So perhaps in a particular episode there's a character with a strong accent and you have a hard time understanding what he's saying, and your results may end up being below your expectations. On the other hand, perhaps the central subject of the episode is one that you're very familiarized with and you have little to no trouble understanding most of it. That doesn't mean that your English understanding is on that level. So there are these issues with performance metrics, but they are somewhat important. But instead it's much better to focus on effort metrics, because these ones we have control over them. Instead of measuring how well you were speaking, how well you were listening, how well you were writing, focus on how well you were studying, on how much you're studying. So read 3 articles per week. It's an effort metric. Read 1 English book per month. That's an effort metric. Study 2 episodes a week of your favorite series. Okay? These are metrics that measure how much effort you're putting into. And it may even be healthier if you don't stress too much, if you don't focus too much, if you don't mind your performance improvement. Of course you want to improve, and it's very good to have an idea of which methods are making you improve the most. But it's also very common to focus on studying and keep focusing on study and not realizing a lot how much you're improving. But then there will come a point where you will face a situation that you will see, oh my God, now I understand this. And before I wasn't able to. And you don't have to have a metric to measure this at that point. I mean, just take your time and not stress too much about it. And at last but not least, my final tip here is to choose metrics that are easy to measure. Let's look at this last example that I gave you. You set yourself a goal of understanding at least half of an episode. What does half mean? How you're gonna measure that? Is it half in terms of time? And so out of a 20-minute episode you have to understand 10 minutes of it? Will you count the minutes that you are understanding or not? Or you will count the total amount of words in the episode and just count the words that you don't understand? That's a lot to do, okay? Choose something simpler to measure. In this situation, one thing that you could do is that you could count the amounts of times that you don't understand a sentence, a phrase, an expression. And you have to keep that count below a certain number. So your goal is in 10 episodes of your favorite series, keep the mean of that count below 15. The lesser this number is, the better is your understanding. And that's pretty much all I had to tell you about metrics and milestones, okay? Just to sum all up, you have to break your bigger goal into smaller goals called milestones. And you can do that breaking them by time or breaking them by smaller tasks. If you do so by smaller tasks, it may help you to think backwards, okay? Keep in mind that if your goal involves learning, there is a learning curve, so take it slowly on the beginning and increase as time goes by. Increase your milestones as time goes by. There are two different kinds of metrics, performance and effort, and even though performance metrics are great because they can motivate you, showing how much better you're getting at something, you should really focus on the effort metrics because that's what you can control. And choose metrics that are easy to measure, okay? So that's it, guys. I hope you liked the content. Comment down below what you thought of the video, if we talked a lot, if you want less information on the video, if it was a little bit confusing. We are just looking for your feedback. These are the first videos that we are producing and we would appreciate your feedback a lot. Subscribe to our channel. See you next video.